How's it going, good people? My name's Pedro, and if you've been looking recently to upgrade your PC, I'm sure you've gone through the various phases, picking the best possible parts, curating a list together on PC Part Picker, realizing you probably don't have that much money in your bank account to afford 3080s, going back through and reevaluating your entire setup, and then coming out with something realistic. Now, as you've gone through that process out there, I'm sure you've probably come across a CPU upgrade at one point or another. Now, it makes sense as well. I mean, after all, the CPU is the brains to your computer, and every sort of instruction that's run, click that's made, game that's played, all has to be processed by your CPU to ultimately be delivered to you and me as end users. And now, if you've been considering a CPU upgrade, I'm pretty sure you've come at a very interesting time, because both AMD and Intel have a lot to offer on their platforms current, along with new platforms on the rise, and at the same time, all leading into a very big and confusing mess that we are in now. Now, before we jump into the video today, if I could take 2 seconds of your time to ask you just click that like button, it would help out the channel immediately, but without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, when it comes to upgrading your hardware, I'm pretty sure you fall into one of 3 groups, the first of which is the smart or savvy shopper, aka the budget bro. Now, if you're a budget bro, you've probably been scouring the internet, looking far and wide on every Amazon listing and every eBay listing you can find on the web to ideally find the best value for money deal on the CPU you can find. Hearing the term secondhand is more of a bargain rather than a put off for you. Now, if you're a budget bro, I'm sure you've come across plenty 2nd and 3rd gen Ryzen CPUs. And you can pretty much thank AMD for making the great value for money effort for you of pushing Ryzen 5th gen to the masses, delivering fantastic performance at a pretty reasonable price. And with that being said, you've pretty much got your prime picking of pretty decent and not so old CPUs when it comes to the Ryzen 3rd gen family. All in all, you should be pretty good when it comes to buying a new CPU. Essentially, if you're running an older AMD platform, specifically a Ryzen 1st gen, you should pretty much be able to buy a new CPU, upgrade your BIOS, and throw the chip in. Now, I say should be, because the one major drawback with the budget bro is compatibility. Say you're coming from an older Intel platform. In that case, you're pretty much out of luck and effectively have to buy a new motherboard, a new CPU, and potentially new RAM. Whereas if you're coming from an older AMD platform, you potentially run the risk of compatibility as well, where maybe your CPU is not compatible with your chipset. In that case, basically, you're still having to buy a new motherboard to go with your CPU, and that can really throw the budget off in the grand scheme of things. Moving on from the budget bro through to the second category. The second category is the people looking for the best-in-class performance, the greatest and latest. Now, these people we'll call the great guy Garys. So now if you're a Gary and looking for the best-in-class performance, obviously you can't go past the Ryzen 5th gen family. Particularly the Ryzen 5800 and 5900X CPUs, both pack fantastic value in both gaming performance and not being too expensive. The main issue that comes with that platform there is having to buy into the X570 and B550 chipsets, both of which are effectively considered a dying breed of platforms, mostly because both AMD and Intel have both announced that the next generation of CPUs to come out from them will all be featuring a brand new socket. So this pretty much means buying a new chipset now will effectively lead to a lot of buyer's remorse in 6 to 7 months from now, when a new platform gets announced and effectively your fancy new PC is no longer that fancy and no longer that fast anymore. But hey, I guess you still got it at a bargain. Either way though, you really don't want to have buyer's remorse when looking at upgrades for your PC. And in that case, it could potentially be worthwhile to sit around and wait like the third category. So now, the third category is essentially people who are passively waiting to effectively see how the market turns out. We'll call these people the passive Pauls. Now, if you're a Paul, you're pretty much able to sit down and have a gaming rig that potentially might not be perfect right now, but doesn't really have any major pain points. Maybe your FPS isn't as high as you want. Maybe buying a new CPU just really isn't in the cards right now, because your current rig is still working fine with a few frustrations here or there. Really, the Pauls are the one who are going to probably profit the most out of this situation here. If you're able to sit down and wait to see how things unfold with the new platform out there, whether or not you're on a budget or whether or not you're balling, I really think you will have the best logical outcome. So now, let's wrap this all up. Take away the silly names and sort of digest this information out here. Pretty much if you're looking to upgrade, there is no one-size-fits-all option. potentially you might be the kind of person that needs a new chip here and now. In that case, I'd say really evaluate if you're on a budget, pick up something that you can afford and something that will be compatible with your current system. If you are a baller and really just want the best of the best, you can't really go wrong with the new Ryzen platforms. But if you're able to wait on your current systems, see how it pans out in the future, I really think you can be the kind of person to benefit the most out of this. And that's the situation that I fall into. I'm the kind of shopper that unless something breaks and I need it to fix tomorrow, I'll pretty much wait to see how this market turns out and then make a decision appropriately. Let's say, for example, tomorrow my CPU starts to slow down and I need to pick up a new CPU. Effectively, I'll wait to see how the new Ryzen 6th gen CPUs turn out, and then from that there, if it's not really that great value, I'll go ahead and pick up a second-hand 5th gen Ryzen. On the other hand, if the new 6th gen Ryzen is a fantastic value for money over my 2700X, you know for a fact I'll be in the best situation to be spending out a little more money, picking up a brand new motherboard, and effectively getting the best experience I can get, because effectively that platform will last me for years to come. Either way guys, that's been my take on it. Let me know down in the comments, are you a budget buyer? Are you looking for more of a baller experience? Or maybe do you fall somewhere in the middle? I'd love to hear what's your current setup and sort of what's your take on upgrading at this point in time. Either way guys, my name's been Pedro and hope you all have a good one.